Okay guys, so this is the third take on this because the power went off the first time and then it blew the light bulb on the smartboard. So, take 3. Okay, so number 1, I just want to congratulate you guys on your test. You all did very, very good on the test this week, so congratulations. But I want to review something I did start talking about in class, the perfect square trinomial. So we're just going to look at x squared plus 16x plus 84 again, okay? So that is a perfect square trinomial. Why? Because when I factor it, it's going to factor to x plus 8, x plus 8. And then I told you in class that I wanted to see you writing it like this, x plus 8 quantity squared, every time you had an answer like that. And that's what we should be doing. So this is a perfect square trinomial because when factored, it will equal this. Also want to point out that this number is 1/2 of that linear term that I keep talking about, okay? All right, and so in class I taught you how to do that. Well, now we're going to use those 3 skills and we're going to learn to complete the square, okay? So a couple of things I want to make sure that you do first. Before you even decide that you're going to complete the square, I want you to determine if the quadratic is factorable. Because if it's factorable, why would you want to do anything else? It's easier. Factoring is going to be the easiest process, that and taking the square root. So you want to check to see if it's factorable first, okay? If it's not, then maybe consider completing the square. All right, then if it isn't factorable and you've decided you're either going to complete the square or use another method, you want to check, is the linear term, does it have an even number? Okay? Because if it does, it's going to make completing the square so much easier. All right, so let's learn how you complete the square. Okay, so I'm going to do this. I'm going to move this up now, like this, and then I'm going to bring me back. Okay. All right, so first things first. We look at our trinomial, and we've checked to see if it's factorable, and it's not. And now we're going to look at it, and we're going to say to ourselves, you know what? Let me just make sure you guys can see the same thing I'm seeing. You can't, so I'm glad I stopped. All right, so I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do this, okay? And you are following along on your notes, so let's just make sure that everybody can read it. I'm going to rewrite this for you. X squared minus 8x minus 2 equals 0, okay? And so again, I'm checking just to make sure you can see. You still can't see it, so maybe like that. Okay, that's a little bit better. Let me go to the side a little bit. Okay, so we're going to look specifically at this, and this is all in your notes, so just make sure you're following along. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that the coefficient, meaning the number in front of the x squared, is a 1, okay? It is. So then the next thing I'm going to do, and it says in your notes, subtract the constant term to the other side. Really, I want you to write bring it to the other side, because you may subtract or you may have to add, which we have to do in this case. So the constant term is term 3. It's the one with only a number. It's got no variable. So I'm going to add it to the other side. All right, and then I'm going to rewrite it. So I have x squared now minus 8x. Now I'm going to leave myself some room, and I'm going to write equals 2. All right, so then what we do next is we're going to make the left a perfect square trinomial. So how do we do that? Well, the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to look at this number 8, and we're going to take half of it. If we cut it in half, we get -4, and then we're going to square that number. So if we square it, we're going to get plus 16, okay? All right, so that's our perfect square trinomial. We've just added the number 16 to the left side of the equation. Now here's where it gets a little bit tricky. Whatever you do to the left side, you always have to do to both sides or to the right side. So since I added 16 here, I'm going to add 16 to the right as well. So very important to do that or your question is going to be wrong. All right, then our next step would be to turn it into a binomial squared. So just like we did, we want the factored form of this. So again, I told you in class it's going to be x. It's always going to be the same sign and half of that number squared, okay? And then on the other side, we now have 2 plus 16, which gives me 18. Okay, So now we're going to solve for x, because that's what we're doing here. We're solving for x using what method that we've just learned, using the square root method. So we're going to take the square root of both sides. So we get x minus 4 equals plus or minus, okay, root 18 reduces to 3 root 2. All right. Then we're going to add the 4 to the other side. And I told you that I wanted you putting that 4 when you added it in front of this piece. So it's going to go right there. Okay? All right, we're still not quite finished. Now we need to finish our answers. So we get x equals 4 plus 3 root 2. And x equals 4 minus 3 root 2. And those are our two solutions. Okay. I know that that may be confusing, so we're going to do one more example and then we're going to practice more in class tomorrow. Okay, so here's our example. And again, I'm going to rewrite this so you can see it a little bit better. X squared minus 4x minus 7 equals 0. Okay, so I'm going to bring the constant to the other side by adding 7 to both sides. Okay? So now I have x squared minus 4x, I'm going to leave myself some room, equals 7. I'm going to turn this into a perfect square trinomial. So I'm going to take half of 4, which is negative 2, and then I'm going to square it, which is 4, so I'm going to add 4 to the equation. Whatever I do to one side, I'm going to make sure I do it to the other side, so I'm going to add 4 to the right side of the equation. I'm just going to come around again and make sure that you guys can see all that. Okay, so not quite. So how about that? Awesome. All right, now I'm going to turn this into a perfect square, a binomial squared, the left side. And remember, it's going to be x, the same sign, and then half of that number, quantity squared, equaling 11. Okay? All right. Then I'm going to solve for x by taking the square roots. So I'm going to take the square root of both sides, and now I have x minus 2. Oops, the square goes away. So x minus 2 equals plus or minus root 11. All right? All right, and then I'm going to add 2 to the other side, and I'm going to always put it in front of the plus minus sign. So I'm going to rewrite my answers as 2 plus root 11 and x equals 2 minus root 11. Okay, so now that's completing the square. So what I'd like you to do now is I'd like you to try the first example on the next page. X squared minus 6x minus 16 equals 0. I'd like you to solve it by completing the square. So I want you to press pause and try it. And then I'm going to go through the steps on it. Okay? Okay. So now we have x squared minus 6x minus 16 equals 0. Okay. And so everyone make sure that you have it. X squared minus 16 equals 0. I'm just fixing this a little bit. All right, so we bring the constant to the other side. So x squared minus 6x, we're going to add 16 to both sides. And we get equals 16. Again, I'm leaving myself room. All right, I'm going to take negative 6. I'm going to make this a perfect square trinomial. I'm going to take negative 6, I'm going to cut it in half, which is negative 3, and then I'm going to square it, which is 9. I'm not going to forget that I have to add that 9 to the other side. I'm going to turn this into a binomial squared. So x minus, same sign, half that number, 3 squared equals 25. All right, then I'm going to take the square root of both sides. And I get x minus 3 equals plus or minus, ooh, I like this, 5. Okay? And then I'm going to add 3 to the other side. So x equals 3 plus 5, which is 8. And x equals 3 minus 5, which is negative 2. So my answers are 8 and negative 2. Okay, and hopefully you were successful on that one, but if not, don't worry. We are going to be practicing a ton of this in class tomorrow, okay, or on Monday. So see you later. Bye-bye.